and welcome to Rewind Reviews, the podcast where we take a look back at movies from our youth, or just older movies in general sometimes, to see if they hold up. This week, Chris got to choose because we alternate choices, and he selected. He set us on a dark path. He set us on a dark path this week. I'm getting flashbacks to when we did all of the Harry Potter movies.
We're not doing them all at once, at least.
Yeah, that was part of the mistake with that. But you know, I do feel a certain element now of we're gonna have to at least do one of these a year.
Yeah, we haven't done that for like other franchise, like, you know what I mean. Like, we still haven't done Toy Story 2, for example. But with this, because there's so many, I do agree. I think one a year, probably right.
Yeah, at the very least. But this year,
and that might take us to Fast 11, maybe.
Well, actually, I guess that would technically be 2 a year because we do 2 seasons of Rewind Reviews within a year, usually.
Yeah,
one in the early portion of the year, and then one that sort of meets up with Christmas.
Yeah. So, and that's probably, I would have thought. So, if we're talking about 5 years, yeah, the 11th movie's bound to be done by then. So, yeah.
Yeah,
because let's not forget there was reasoning behind you. It wasn't me just being like, fuck it, let's get rid of one slot a year. It was I looked at what was coming and I was like, oh, Fast 10 is out, a few days, you know, within this podcast, either side. Let's do it, baby.
Well, I still, and you know, I'm not the only one who said this. This has been said in multiple places, but how is Fast 10 not called Fast 10 Your Seatbelts?
Yeah, there's a lot. Like the Fate of the Furious that isn't stylized. The F8 of the Furious, like, yeah. I think it is also on some posters, but
sometimes there's a discrepancy between the movie's actual title and what's on all the posters too. So
yeah.
I went onto ITV yesterday because, for those who don't know, in the UK at the moment, ITVX have all the Fast and the Furious movies on there. I don't know why. They just do. I had to watch it with ads. I nearly jokingly reviewed each ad they showed me during the movie, but I just couldn't be asked because none of them were that exciting. But they've got them on there, and I pulled up and it was like Fast and Furious 5, and Nadia was like, "Isn't it called Fast 5?" And I'm looking at the poster, and the poster says Fast 5, but the title of the movie is Fast and Furious 5, and that is, I googled it. Wait, let me just check it out. Fast and Furious 5. Yeah, the movie's official. See, IMDb has it as Fast 5.
I think it's Fast 5. Yeah, it's Fast 5. It's because it's Fast 5 and Furious 7. And 6 is just like Fast and Furious 6 or something.
Maybe it's not that one then.
Which one's technically Fast and Furious with an ampersand? I think that's 4, isn't it?
Yeah, which is why that on ITV they've had to label this one the Fast and the Furious, the original. Which is even more confusing, considering there's a movie from like the 50s called Fast and Furious, but we won't talk about that.
Why don't they just put... If ITV are worried, just put numbers. Just put numbers. Like...
Yeah, look, so in the UK it wasn't called Fast 5, that's the confusion. It's called Fast and Furious 5 in the UK, because I've got the Blu-ray up here. Right, and it's called Fast and Furious 5. What the fuck is going on with these movies, man?
Oh, who knows, mate? Don't forget the third one is technically chronologically like the 5th one or something. Like, yeah. And in this one where he's talking about I think he's talking about his dad's death, and in my head I'm like, I'm pretty sure John Cena is there as well now.
Yeah, John Cena is there now, Chris. Yes, correct. And you know how you know they're brothers, Chris?
Because they said it a lot in the movie.
Because they have the same spray tan. That's how you know they're brothers. They both wear a vest and have the same spray tan.
This is what I love about these movies, though. Like, it's just so much fun. Like, right. It's like I found myself watching trailers for the other movies and just being like, you know, it's so hard not to be like, it's so hard to review this movie and not go, do you remember in Fast and Furious 9 or F9 or whatever that one was called, where they go into space?
Yeah. Or like, do you remember in like 6 or 7 when they fight a submarine? That's 7, I think.
That's 8. That's 8.
Is that 8? Jesus.
That's 8.
Do you remember the one where they fight? They fight. So, do you remember the one where they fight a guy that can control all the cars in like a supervillain Marvel-esque way, and all the cars pile out of buildings and like car parks and chase them? Do you remember that one?
I think 7 is the one where gravity doesn't exist, and they're jumping between skyscrapers in Dubai. I think it is.
Do you remember Chris? Do you remember the one where they fix the sound? So you can hear what's being said during action sequences.
Look, but
Oh wait, no, sorry, that's anyone that isn't this one. Got it.
We can't stress enough. Dan and I love these movies.
Yeah, we do. Here's the thing, right? Here's the thing. I get criticized a lot for my taste on these movies. I work with a lot of people who are very passionate about film. And I mean film, like cinema. And when I get excited about a Fast and the Furious anything, I get a lot of side eyes, I get a lot of like weird looks, and I'm just like, look. Get off your pretentious little high horses here for just a second. Sometimes I want something dumb. Dumb can be good if it's executed well, right? If it's fun and it kind of knows what it is. Now, the problem with these movies towards them now, so 9, and I'm suspecting 10, is now they're starting to become the thing people think they are, which is dumb and not that fun either. But that doesn't mean the first 8 movies aren't a boatload of fun to watch through.
and more fun. And I'm sorry, more fun. There is a world of difference between these and the latter Transformers movies.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Do you know what I mean? Like, a world of difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And, with the exception of the weird ego stuff that runs through these movies, where in later movies, certain actors, I won't be naming them, actually, I'll be naming them all, have contracts that stipulate they can only be hit so many times. They have to hit back as many times as they're hit and all this jazz, because it's all just ego-driven. I can't look like the weaker one in a fight sort of nonsense between all these action stars. Your Stathams, your Dwayne "The Rock" Johnsons, your Vin Diesels. Like it gets weird, right? There's a lot of toxic masculinity around this franchise, and the more control that Vin Diesel has gotten as he's gotten in, the worse they've gotten too. That's for sure.
You're naming actors, mate. Don't forget Idris Elba played Superman in one of these movies.
He did. Wait, that's the spin-off though, right? That was Hobbs and Shaw.
That is the spin-off, yes.
Which I think will be struck from the canon.
I can't see it. I don't feel a need to include that in our review.
Oh no, I want to watch it again. I like that. I had a good time with that movie, but it's not a classic.
Okay, we will.
But it's a fun movie. Why not? I'm just saying. I think it'll be struck from the canon because it didn't make very much money and it was a bit goofy.
So, I see what you mean. So looping back, Dan, to this movie.
Yes.
When did you first watch this movie? What's your history with this movie?
So I caught the last hour and a bit of this movie on ITV, but funnily enough, in my youth. I think the second or third one had already come out, and I hadn't seen any of them. And this one was just on TV, and I put it on. It was just kind of like background. Maybe I was playing on like my Game Boy or something. I don't know. Bit of Pokemon or something, but it was on, and I was like, started to get a bit sucked into the plot. I thought, because I guess I was pretty young. I don't know how young. I'd have to, I guess I'm trying to do the math on the ages. I'm not sure how old I would have been, but basically, because it was 2001, right? So I would have had to have been, when it came out, I would have had to have been older than 12, 13, so I must have been in like 15, 16. I must have been either way, whatever I was doing, I put it on, and I got sucked in to this plot line because I was like, how engaging this is, like, the tension of this guy. Wouldn't have phrased it this way, obviously, but like I was really into the idea of these two people that were working together, and one of them is essentially betraying the other. That basic hook was like enough. I was like, oh man, he's a cop, he's a criminal, they're working together. Oh man, and I got sucked right into it. So at some point then I went back, watched the whole movie. Really enjoyed it. But heard the sequels were like bad, straight to DVD-esque, like none of the stars except for like some are back, like it's So I was just like, not interested in that. I enjoyed the first movie for what it was. I'm done. Like, and then we were at a house party a few years later, and like afterwards, when everyone was sort of, when the party wound down, it was like 5 a.m, and we were all a bit starting to feel hungover, and everyone was low energy. someone was like, we could put on Tokyo Drift. And I hadn't seen 2, but I was just like, yeah, fuck it. Like, why not, right? And Tokyo Drift went on, and then I fell in love with the franchise as a franchise. Because I think Tokyo Drift, and we'll get to it, is brilliant. Like, I know a lot of people don't like Tokyo Drift. I love that fucking movie. It's great. And it made me realize what these movies could be, including that post-credit sequence, or maybe just pre-credit sequence where Vin Diesel shows up again. And then I was in. And I've seen every one in the cinema since. Well, probably... Actually, I don't know if I saw Hobbs and Shaw in the cinema. I think that was the one I saw afterwards. But all the mainline ones I've seen in the cinema since. I love this franchise. I think it's dumb as hell, but so entertaining. Yeah. Big thumbs up for me. That's kind of my history with it, though. It's a weird way to discover a franchise by skipping the second one, seeing the third and being like, oh, I love these, and then going back. Especially considering that the first time I saw the first one, it was like half the movie, or just over half the movie, just the last bit. But yeah, I really liked it, and I've got a theory as to why it worked without the start of the movie, which we'll come to when reviewing this. Because this movie cannot be reviewed by our usual criteria, Chris. No. No. We'll talk about
right.
What's
the criteria? Okay.
We'll talk about it. This basically we have certain things we look for in movies in terms of story structure and approach, and movies to clarify certain character arcs. This movie is choosing very deliberately not to do that.
Yeah.
And to go with big characters. We'll come to the details of that in a bit. But how about yourself? How did you come across this franchise? What's your history with it? I can't remember whether you were into these in your youth or not.
So it was a friend's birthday. We were sent to Blockbuster. It was very exciting, as any Blockbuster trip was, to pick a movie, and then we were going to have pizza. And I remember the pizza was being ordered from a takeaway that was literally like 4-5 minutes away. Not even that, to be honest with you, 3 minutes away. But because the house was part of like a work complex thing, like basically the house wasn't showing up on their system, so they were refusing to deliver. So I remember that got a bit tense between my mate's dad and the pizza delivery company. But basically in Blockbuster, there would have been I can't name what, but my memory, vague, potentially wrong memory, is that there was a comedy out that I wanted to see, that I was pushing for. But the mates were a little bit more laddish than me. They were more into cars, and the birthday boy wanted the Fast and the Furious. So I'm like, okay, fine. So we sit down to watch this movie, and I'm like, this isn't gonna be for me. And I felt that way at the time watching it. I enjoyed it more than I thought I would. I had a good time with it. I followed it, and like I was like, oh, that wasn't that bad. But I didn't go away going, this is the best film ever. I went away going, that was a movie about cars, and I'm not really into cars. And then we would have played PlayStation, which I also wasn't really that into. We would have played Grand Theft Auto. So I would have spent most of that evening, I'd imagine, thinking about the pizza. But there we go. So we watched this. So I vividly remember, like, all sort of basically having a teenage boy sleepover in his lounge, like, horrible, like a room smelling of BO and Lynx, and watching the Fast and the Furious. And it must have caught me enough to have a vague interest in the sequel, because I remember watching that on video. I think my girlfriend at the time had it, and she'd already seen it, so I borrowed it off her and I watched it. And again enjoyed it. Again, kind of went, yeah, it's not that bad. And then years later, I think I rented Tokyo Drift from the library or something like that. And then just fell out, and then just didn't really engage with the other movies.
That's funny, because you got out but just before the Renaissance, essentially. Because 4 is often cited as the point when the movies became the thing they were going to become. The DNA is there in those first 3, but you got off just out. How unlucky!
I know. It was so weird, and I remember didn't ever see it, but and didn't particularly. I mean, I'd watched the first 3. I had a vague, being into stories and script writing and all that sort of stuff, I definitely had an interest of like how they were weaving these characters in and out of these movies. I was aware that, you know, obviously because I'd seen the second one and Vin's not in it, but then Brian's not in the third one and all that sort of stuff, and I found that intriguing or whatever. I didn't ever watch the fourth one, or the fifth, or the sixth, or the seventh. And I think the eighth had come out. So I remember sitting in a pub with a friend, and she had a friend there. And at this point, I think the sixth film was coming out, and she sat there, and she went with complete sincerity, the Fast and Furious is the greatest franchise that's ever been made. And me and one of my other friends, so not the one that was the mutual friend for the reason this girl was there, pissed ourselves laughing and were just like, what the fuck are you talking about? And she was like, seriously, what have you seen? And I was like, I've seen like 1 to 3. And she was like, 4 and 5 are amazing. You need to watch them. And I'm like, fucking no. Like, really, like, what is going on? Like, still laughing about it days later. Being like, you know, that girl is Fast and Furious. What's that about? And then, you know, you kind of can't fight momentum. And then, so, like, I'm witnessing, like, this, you know, 6 and 7 becoming huge, and the numbers on Fast 5 being insane. And I am aware that Fast 5 reunites a lot of like the gangs from the other films, and I'm like, well, that's interesting. Like, that's, you know, and then my interest is piqued, and I'm a bit like, we should check out these movies at some point. I should watch them because they obviously became this giant thing then. And then when 8 was just being released on like home video, and just before F9 came out completely, Jess and I consciously made the decision to watch to go back from the beginning. Oh, I'd attempted once before to do it. I actually got the box set of 1 to 6, 1 to 7, one Christmas, and was going to rewatch them. And me and some friends were doing like a monthly, we'd meet up and we'd watch a Fast and Furious movie, and we only ever got to, I think, the third again. I think it was literally again had done the first 3, and then but I was like, no, I want to commit now. I want to do this, and it was like F9 was coming out like we were locked down and stuff like that. So I think over the course,
because F9 was what 2021, right? So that was.
Yeah.
Right.
So over the course of only, I think, like a week, Jess and I powered through all 9 movies, and absolutely. Well, I think we got through all 8, and then 9 wasn't quite out yet. And absolutely, well, 9 if you include Hobbs and Shaw. And absolutely loved them. Had just so much fun watching them. I think they're, you know, the way the narrative evolves and just gets insane, and the way in the later movies they go, well, we'll just acknowledge it. We'll just have Ludacris say it. We'll just have sorry, not Ludacris. It's Tyrese Gibson's character, isn't it? That it is always like, this is insane. Like, this is nuts. We'll just have that. We'll just have him every movie be like, remember when we fought a plane? How weird was that? It's like, you can't. That's not enough. Like, you can't just keep pointing it out. And have a great time. So let's dive into this movie, Dan, because it's interesting, isn't it? How much of the DNA of what it does become is like the scene at the, not to jump straight to the end, and I want to hear your point about the reviewing it. So maybe we should start there. But I was amazed watching the kind of the heist where you've got the guy in the truck who cares about his truck a lot more than you think most people would. He's really protecting that thing. And I'm watching this, and you know, Letty's going under the lorry and all this sort of stuff, and I was like, oh, this is a heist scene. Like, there's a heist scene in the first movie. I think Time has rewritten the first movie to be all street racing and DVD players, and actually, there's quite a bit of the DNA of what these movies become already in place. Like, it's easy to forget. They're a gang. They're a gang robbing lorries on the highways right from movie one. Like, you know, the DNA is there, and that really took me by surprise.
They've had $6 million worth of DVD players, Chris. And those Panasonic TV DVD combis dates the movie somewhat.
Do you think if it wasn't DVD players, people wouldn't think of the movie in that? Do you know what I mean? In the it's so different regard. Do you know what I mean?
No, I think people do forget the heist element of these movies. I think that is the main problem. I think people think of this as a street racing movie. And he's undercover in a street racing racket rather than the heists, which is funny because there's the heist that is the sort of big set piece of this movie towards the end, the desert heist, the one that sort of goes wrong, is actually like the blueprint for a lot of what follows. Like, I think is it the fourth or the fifth one opens with a really similar heist, like a much more elaborate version of it.
The fourth, yeah,
a much more elaborate version of it. Don't get me wrong, you know. It's when the movie started to really ramp up the set pieces, but you know, you've got to start somewhere, right? And this was not a big budget movie, and I think absolutely. And also, look, this movie lays out the theme of this franchise from minute one. There are all kinds of family, Brian, and that's a choice you're going to have to make. That line is spoken in this movie. For as many times as I've heard somebody make fun of these movies for being about Corona and family, they are, in many ways, about found family. That is the theme of this franchise, right? Your family aren't necessarily who you're born and raised with, but the people you surround yourself with in your adult life. And that is a beautiful message, right? I think that's wonderful. And the fact that the movies keep driving it home, every other movie, yeah, right, the same theme across 9 movies is a lot of movies for one theme, right? I get it. But it's consistent, and it's here so clearly. And I find that really, really, rewarding. Also, like, actually seeing it when the guy said that line, "There's all kinds of family, Brian, and that's the choice you're gonna have to make." I was like, "Fuck me, they knew." Like, really, like,
yeah. And what also anyone criticizing that? Sorry, just to interrupt you. Anyone criticizing that? Bullshit. If you went into a Fast and Furious movie and it wasn't about that, you'd be disappointed and going, "Well, it's not a Fast and Furious movie. They've taken the heart out." Da 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 da. Like, I'm sorry, it works, and like you say, it's absolutely here. In particular, the scene I was stunned by is the scene at the end where Dom and Brian are racing towards that racetrack. And I'm thinking, regardless of the slightly weaker character work with a lot of these characters, regardless of, like, you know, story things, i.e. we never see him get his comeuppance like Brian. We never see that kind of thing and the whole regardless of all of that, I know what this moment means. I know what these two racing. I know what him giving him the keys at the end. I know what all of that means. And it's fucking effective. Like, it's
right.
It's tense.
And that's why
it's gripping.
Right. So this is what I was saying earlier. This links into what I was saying about how we have to review this movie slightly differently. Because I was writing my notes as I was going. And one of the notes I wrote, let me see if I can find it. This is a note, and I don't agree with this note now, by the way. You know, when I finished the movie, I changed my mind. I was like, I wrote, incorrectly, "This movie needs to spend more time convincing me Brian is following more than his dick." because the movies keep having characters say that's all he's doing, as if they're wrong, but I don't have any evidence to the contrary. Right? Incorrect. That is incorrect. And I'll tell you why. The reason we cannot review this movie the way we review other movies is this is a movie about actions, not words. And I can sit there all I want and analyze the dialogue and the things the characters are saying to get meaning, like you would in a normal movie. But that is not what this movie is about. Because both characters, well, mostly Brian, but there's a big lie hanging over all this movie. You know, Brian is not who he says he is, right? So no one is being honest in any of these scenes. So you can't judge them on what they're saying. You can only judge them on the characters' actions. And what happens at the end of this movie, when presented with the choice to let Dom go or take him in and complete his job, he chooses to let Dom go. Is there a bunch of insane stuff that happens before that where Dom should have been caught and it's weird that he isn't? Yeah, 100%. 1,000 points in which Dom should have been caught in this movie prior to that moment. But let's just forget that for a second, and let's go to the quite simple fucking... Oops, sorry. The quite simple drama. My laptop has WhatsApp on it, and someone messaged me. My phone is on silent, but my laptop wasn't, so that's why I was. I forgot what I was saying. Good time. I mean, to be fair, these are important messages. Nadia's booked me tickets to go play with lambs.
Nice. That's very exciting.
I get to go feed the lambs. That's very exciting.
I look forward to hearing all about it, and then repeat visits until eventually you're describing the Lamb and the Doolin 3 Tokyo Drift.
Yeah, which is the one where we bring back the lamb from the first visit. He's a sheep now.
Every series when we review these movies, I want you to be having a lamb visit, and I want them to be getting more and more extreme until
this week,
Beth died.
This week, me and a lamb fought a submarine.
Yeah.
This week, me and a lamb drove a car from one tall building into the next through the window. Yeah, but I am going to be overusing this word, but going back to the film, there's almost like a sort of Shakespearean drama to it, right? That's playing out. Like it's this conflict of, and the movie does lay it out in some dialogue. When at one point when someone says to him, like, "Wait, am I conflating?" No, I'm conflating a scene from a completely different thing I'm watching at the moment. That's hilarious. I was going to say, I was just about to pull a scene from the first series of Luther. My brain is dying. Okay, sorry everyone. I'm just suffering an aneurysm.
I mean, this is shambolic.
I'm getting distracted about lambs. I'm quoting from other movies. I was going to talk about a scene from Luther where one of the characters says, you know, you've put all this time into your police career and you've thrown it away. You're potentially going to throw it away for that. Like, you must really believe in this cause. But that's a scene from Luther. It's not from this show at all. Not from this movie, sorry, at all. So my point is, though, they lay it out. They lay out the consequences for Brian throughout the movie, right? That whether he does or doesn't, do this. But the whole time, you don't know what side he really lies on. And that's actually kind of the genius of the movie. There is actually a weird tension to not knowing what Brian's going to do throughout the movie. I think some of it may be accidental because the movie, I can't always tell what's intention and what's not in this movie, but I'm going with it. I'm going to work under the assumption that there's intent to all of this and that this is actually really well thought out because I think benefit of the doubt, right? Because it works. Is there a bunch of practical, nitpicky stuff that I will list at some point in this review? Where I'm like, why didn't someone say this at this point? Why didn't this happen? Why did this happen? It's weird that this happened. Yeah, a ton of that. An absolute boatload of that. But the actual thrust of this movie is deeply satisfying. The characters work on some sort of emotional level. Again, is what they're saying always consistent? No, but several of these characters are lying both to us and themselves and each other. So that's fine, in my opinion. And so reviewing this on our usual standards just does not work. We've got to look at this more of like looking at what the characters are choosing to do, not what they're saying. And that actually, again, maybe accidentally, but does tie into the theme of the family you choose. Choice. That's the key here. So the movie builds up to Brian's choice to let Dom Toretto go free. So yeah, I think we have to look at this movie different, but actually really, really cleverly done and way, way better than I think people give it credit for. I think people dismiss the first three, and I think they're wrong on two of those.
I like the second one too.
I'll be honest with you, it's been a while since I've seen the second one, but my memory is not fond of the second one. It's my least favourite. I love the third one. And I've noticed just now, checking into it, that the third one onwards was when Chris Morgan took over as the writer, like sole writer of these movies. First two are written by like 10 guys, including this one, David Ayer. Yeah, shocker.
Really? Oh, wow.
Yeah, I know. But Chris Morgan takes over writing from Tokyo Drift. And he writes them from Tokyo Drift right through to The Fate of the Furious. So he doesn't work on 9, which is the next one I didn't like. So I'm wondering if Chris Morgan's a big part of the reason this franchise works. But we'll come back to that. Sadly, I don't think Chris Morgan's on the script for the 10th one either. So that makes me sad.
It's all Justin Lin now, I think, isn't it?
Justin Lin and 2 other guys are on the writing for 10, and Justin Lin wrote the 9th one with a guy called Daniel Casey.
Although I think Justin Lin left for creative differences directing Fast 10. Anyway.
I mean, can we talk very briefly about that? Because it's insane. Justin Lin was directing Fast 10. He did pre-production. He was on the set. They were starting filming. They put out an amazing video promoting the start of production on Fast 10, where Vin Diesel's like, "Hey Lin, hey Justin, is this going to be the biggest and best Fast and Furious movie yet?" And then there is a way too long of a pause, and Justin's like, "Yep." and then, and I shit you not, this is true. Less than a week later, Justin Lin had left the project. It's my favorite fucking thing that's ever happened. And now they've got some other guy in. Now, apparently there's a clause in the contract that stipulates Vin Diesel cannot direct these movies himself. So they've got this guy in, Louis Letterer, who's going to direct Fast 10. But let me tell you, if they haven't just hired a guy Vin Diesel can bully, I don't know. Do you know what I mean?
Man.
And I don't think Louis Letterer is a bad director. He directed the Incredible Hulk film, the 2008 one, which I think is fine, which is pretty good. He did Transporter 2, which is fine. But he did the first Now You See Me, which I like well enough. So, this isn't a bad director, but he is literally, I think, quite clearly been hired to be a puppet to Vin Diesel.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fascinating how those, and oh man, I really do. I'm just so excited. Like how that, like when I watched that trailer, and it's like, oh, they're tying it in again with more backstory, and we're going back to the 5th movie heist. Cool, okay, stunning. Anyway,
why not, Chris? Why not? Let's make this series more complicated. I say more complicated.
I agree with what you've just said, and I think the Brian storyline in particular is done very effectively. Yep. I think you do buy it as well. You do buy at the end, like as you said, changing your mind on the note. You do buy that it's, but I can't even say how, because I think Jesse's a big part of it, and I think a lot of the work they do with Jesse, showing them bonding, showing him adamant that he shouldn't do the race, and then showing his reaction when he gets killed, and I don't believe Brian is chasing after the villains whose name escapes me. What's it? Is that Justin as well, the villain?
In this one,
who's the villain of this? Yeah, with the motorbike who kills.
Christ, let me see.
Kills Jesse.
Johnny Tran.
Tran, yes. I don't think Brian's going after Tran to arrest him. He's going after Tran for revenge. Like, do you know what I mean? They make you believe Brian's journey in this movie. They make you, because of the way, and I think Paul Walker's performance is a lot of it. It's very subtle, but he feels as much of a juvie rebel that just wants to race as much as he does a cop. Do you know what I mean? Like, mm-hmm. And so you kind of get the feeling he starts the movie from a place of, yes, he's a cop, but you never feel that he's all and out cop. You feel he's got a bit of a darker side to him, which is allowed to breathe a bit in all of this stuff. So yeah, I agree with you, man. I think I was amazed at how the high stuff, the found family, but also more than that, how effective I found Brian's journey and the relationship with Dom. Mm-hmm. Despite the fact that, like you say, there are some major flaws, i.e., in terms of lack of character development, you could point to, I don't know, every female character in the movie. But
We'll get to it. Let's do some of the nitpicking first, Chris. Should we get some nitpicking out the way?
Well, actually, do you mind if I want to get your thoughts on, do you agree that Jesse's a big part of it and the Jesse stuff is effective and done well?
Well, yes and no. So I do think when you do feel it when he dies, and it does villainize this guy. But at the end of the day, like that, I think that kind of muddles some of the ending a little, the Jesse stuff. I feel like it should have either been that story or it should have been the Brian Dom story, because at the end it's like suddenly it's about this other character dying at the hands of a villain, and then they're just racing from the police for separate reasons, and the things aren't linked. So I think in isolation, the Jesse stuff is very well done, and you do really weirdly care about that character, and you do get very invested, and you feel bad when he gets shot. Like, you know, it's justice for Jesse. When's Jesse back? That's my question. But is he like the last character that's not made a return across these movies?
I think so. And if anyone's thinking, yeah, but he dies. No. It's the Fast and Furious game.
They gloss over Han's death by just saying he wasn't in the car, even though we explicitly saw him in the car. They just cut to a shot of him on a street corner with another character going, looking on at the car crash he was supposedly in, going, I guess I'm not in that car then. Like, it's these movies don't give a shit.
No.
Anyway.
And it's not only that, we've seen him, we in multiple movies have seen him in that car in multiple angles.
Yeah. And if you're thinking, well, they must explain how they got him out of the car then. Nah. It's just a cut to him watching the accident happen. Weird. Anyway, although to be fair, that's from 9, right? So that's the non-Chris Morgan movie. I wonder if Chris Morgan had written that, he'd maybe have made it make a bit more sense. Anyway, doesn't matter. My point is, justice for Jesse. Let's get him back. Fast 10 or Fast 10 Part 2. I want Jesse back. I want to find out that secretly Jesse was dragged away and put in a government training program, and now he's like a ninja or something. That's what I want. That's what I want. And what's funny about these movies is actually, when you think about it, right, when you get to like the later movies and Dom Toretto is like a super soldier, you know, that's not just driving cars, but like, you know, fighting armies on his own.
Yeah. You
just sort of go, wasn't this the guy that was boosting DVD players in the first movie? Was he underperforming? Was he? he was just nicking DVD players, wasn't he? Anyway, while I agree with you that the Jesse stuff works, I actually do think it kind of muddles the end of the movie a little bit. The stuff with Johnny Trent really is a little unnecessary for the end of the movie, if I'm being honest. I think it creates more like there's so much stuff happening. It's just like shit being thrown at you, but it's unnecessary. I think we could have easily gone from the big chase on the highway to a confrontation between Dom and Brian, I should say, where it ends in the police are turning up and Brian makes the choice to say, Dom, throwing the Jesse stuff in the middle of that just muddles it, you know, with Johnny Trans, the two guys coming along shooting them. Just, yeah, it's very muddled.
Yeah, that's fair. And also then, and like it leads to like Tran's death, which is just so underplayed. It literally is like the screenwriters go, well, we need to probably kill him, so let's just kill him. Like, okay.
It feels like they were trying to weave all the stories to they're all happening at the same time. You know, they're coming together for the climax. That's what it feels like they're trying to do. But I think, sadly, they just don't quite thread the needle well enough on that one. And I think they'd end up feeling weirdly separate. And there's a slight bit of like narrative whiplash from just like, oh, okay, we're dealing with Dom and Brian. Nope, Johnny Tran showed up and he's killing a guy. Okay, we've chased him. He's dead. Now we're back to Dom and Brian. Like it doesn't quite weave together in the way that they, I think, wanted. But I that's fine. It's not a massive criticism. It's just more of an observation. It doesn't really detract. It just slightly segments the last section of the movie when it could have flowed a lot better structurally speaking. I don't think it really affects the intent or the way it plays out. Like I think it's just a little bit of a bump in the structure and pacing. So. Let's do some brief nitpicks. Just get through a couple of those because, yeah, it's worth getting those out of the way before we talk about some of the overall stuff. Because I want to talk overall about like how we thought the action was, the visuals, the music, you know, all that stuff, the love story. I've got a couple of topics I want to hit on before we sort of, you know, get through this. So let's do some smaller, more detailed orientated stuff before we get to the big picture. Right, quick question for you, Chris. If you're a police officer and you call in a guy with an injured arm on the side of the road, do they not also send police? Presumably, there's been some sort of accident. Regardless of what mission he's on, why were the police not, like, right up their asses on that highway?
Mate, there should be a policeman in... He phoned the police. Surely there should be a policeman in that fucking helicopter.
Exactly. And yet the helicopter just picks up the injured guy, and Dom just gets in his car and drives off, and no one wants statements. No one wants anything. Right. What's going on? All right. Nitpick number 2. Because I just want to get through these. If, at the end of the movie, he just gets him to do a trace on Dom's phone. He gets Dom's phone number from his sister. Why not do that at the start of the movie? Get Dom's phone number when he befriends him. And then just give that to the police, and then that's his job over, surely. Because if they've got Dom's phone number and they can trace it, then they would see he was present for the heists.
Yeah.
And then they've got the proof they need, and they can arrest him instead of arresting the Johnny Tran guy and his family.
Yeah, you're right.
They present a solution to this problem 2/3 into the movie that they should have used it should have been step 1. It should have been first. Just get in with him, see if you can get hold of a phone number. There's a phone he keeps on him. We can trace it.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Nope. Third, what is Brian's actual plan? I'm constantly confused by this. So they want him to infiltrate because they said there's 6 million quid's worth of DVD players have gone missing. Okay, tick, I understand this. The police and the FBI, because it's a federal crime now because of the quantity, sure, they want in, right? They've got a cop who has a history of street racing. Great, we're going to use that guy to sort of infiltrate the street racing guys. And what we're going to do is we're going to spend a shit ton of money to give him a nice car to get in with them, right? Then what? Because he doesn't go after hard evidence. He just sort of floats around and sort of goes, I think it might be this Johnny Tran guy. like he's not taking pictures, he's not noting down names, he's doing no police work whatsoever. What's the plan? Is he just waiting for someone to invite him on a heist?
I think that is it. I think that is the plan. And he searches the garage for evidence, doesn't he? Although I then got very confused about whose garage that was. I must say.
Very confused.
That's Tran's garage, isn't it?
Yes.
So was Vince?
So he goes into that garage
following
after,
him.
So what if you're missing a scene that goes just before that you might have maybe forgotten since you watched it. The garage that he goes to, he goes in there because earlier that day a bunch of Johnny Tran's guys come into the shop he works at, which I don't know.
And order 3 parts.
And they ask
for
the parts for 3 Honda Civics, 3 the stuff that's been roughly, which by the way just turns out to be a massive coincidence, not related at all.
So new question: Why are Lance? Sorry, I think it's Lance. Why are Lance and Dom so pissed that it's not their they act as if. I think the reason the scene is confusing is because they act like they've caught him snooping around their workshop.
Right. But then he has to his explanation is he's spying on the competition, and that's why he gets away with it.
Yeah, and I think that makes sense, and that does make. But it's
why are they so angry at finding him doing that?
Yeah, their reaction is fucking bizarre. Their reaction should be more like, "What the fuck are you up to, Brian?"
Yeah. Doesn't make sense. Nitpick 4, Chris. Right. You're a police officer. You're running an undercover operation, right? Mm-hmm. You've got a guy. He's working his way slowly but surely, as is all undercover operations, into getting answers, right? And he says, the truckers are on my ass. You've got 38 hours to solve this. Do the truck drivers have more authority than the police? Is question 1. That's question.
Or Dan, or the FBI.
Yeah, right? Fine. We'll make it that. It'd be better. But also, I tell you what wouldn't be conducive to a good undercover mission is a random, arbitrary time frame. Look, Dom might not do another heist for 2 months. Maybe he's going to start spacing them. You don't know. The point of undercover work is it's long-term work. Not, I want answers and I want them now. God damn it. Why is that done? I've got 2 questions about that, actually. Why is that done logistically? Like I just said, there's no logic to why a police officer would do that. That's not how undercover operations work. But even if I want to suspend my disbelief and go, okay, in this world, that's acceptable. From a script perspective, why do they put that timer on it? You could say, oh, it's what forces
Yeah, it's
him to get
irrelevant.
a bit more direct with Dom next time he sees him, and he says, "I know you're up to something. You're not paying for all what's under the hood of your car with your mechanic business." And he sort of forces his way in, but he could have done that anyway at that point in the movie, and I wouldn't have questioned it.
No,
He doesn't need an arbitrary timer to remind us of that.
No, not at all.
Right. Yeah. While we're on nitpicks, well, this is more of a criticism of the movie. We'll come back to this actually. That point isn't a nitpick about this plot or anything. That's the thing I'm going to bring up there will come up under like action scenes, I think. What was the other one? I had a couple more. Did I have some more? So I mean, I'm led to believe that a lot of this is like illegal street racing, right? So the first section of the movie is an illegal street race, yes.
Yep.
And Dom lives his life quarter of a mile at a time, because that's how long a drag race generally tends to be. Usually about a 10-second race. Is this correct? This is all what the movie establishes?
That's what the movie's telling me, Dan, yeah.
So why is the first race about 6 minutes long?
I don't know.
Fine. And if it's an illegal street race, Chris, why does no one call the police hours before when the crowds start to turn up?
Oh, yeah. The street racing logic is phenomenal.
All right, even worse, because I can't. The drag race thing. Not drag race, the race war thing. I don't know why I said drag race. Because they're drag racing. Yes, the thing they're doing is drag racing, but they call it race wars. Right, race wars out in the desert, yeah? Is that an official event or is that an illegal one too? Because at first I was like, oh, it's another one of those illegal street racy things these guys are doing, but they're doing it out in the desert so they're less likely to get stopped by the cops. But then there's like security and stewards, and it all seems very organised.
Yeah, I got the feeling Race Wars was legit. Was my impression.
Fine. That's fine. I just, the movie didn't make that clear, and I was really confused as to why they had security present. Fine, that's okay.
Yeah,
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I think that one's legit. It's all the street races are all building to the race wars. Like that's the big thing.
So, 6 million in DVD players, Chris. If we're assuming 200 quid per DVD player. Me and Nadia did the math on this last night. 600. So if we were assuming that we looked at the price of a DVD player in 2001, not the DVD TV combi actually, which is what they mostly show. We should have looked up that. He'd have had to have stolen 30,000 DVD players to get 6 million. Do you reckon he's...
Where are they hidden? That's what I'm asking.
Yeah, but 30,000. How many DVD players can one truck hold? Because it's probably a couple hundred, right? How many trucks has he ripped off for 30,000 DVD players?
For reference, dear listener, I've just looked it up. You can now buy a DVD player on Amazon for 35 quid.
So it would take a lot more DVD players.
I don't think it's a good business. I don't think it's a good criminal business model now.
No,
there's a Panasonic
Chris,
one here for
I'm not sure it
quid.
was. I'm not sure it was then, because the frequency in which he'd have to hit these trucks to get 30,000 DVD players to get his 6 million, fucking mental.
Yeah.
Is there any others? I think that's my nitpicks out the way. Do you have any of those kind of like weird little quirky nitpicks?
Just the system. One guy to avoid getting caught for the street race. One guy listening to a police radio and working on the assumption that so they agree the night. So it's Wednesday night, right? What's the plan? We're just going to assume a big crime's going to break out, and then we're going to assume that all the police will definitely be busy with that. It doesn't feel like the most concrete of plans.
No, not most people. Mostly because they're already set up for the street race. Like there's a crowd there, the cars are all lined up. They're just waiting for a crime to be happening to do the race. Has no one already called in the gathering? Like they're playing music, the cars are revving. That's a street race before someone says go. Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah. My big one watching it, you've touched upon it, but the notion that Dom didn't get caught when the helicopter comes and Brian calls in the accident was insanity.
Right. Yeah.
That was my biggest watching it. That was the one where I was like, "Come on, we're really stretching reality now, aren't we?"
Yeah. And I know they wanted Brian to have the moment with Mia in the car where he tells her he's a police officer before the moment where Dom finds out. But if I'm being honest with you, Chris, I actually really prefer if that had been the moment everyone found out, because the idea that in the end he blew his cover to save a life and the life of someone who fucking hated him is powerful. But it is somewhat lessened, in my opinion, that he'd already done it to Mia, because Mia is going to tell Dom. Telling Mia is setting yourself on a path to Dom finding out. Because Mia will not hide that from Dom. Not in a million years. So you're in a weird position when you have the moment in the movie where he blows his cover to save the life of the guy that hated him. Because I'm just like, yeah, well, you've already blown your cover. Like, there's nothing. You're not giving much away here, other than just ripping the Band-Aid off a bit quicker in terms of Dom finding out. And by the way, some actual acting from Vin Diesel in that scene. The look he gives, that Vin Diesel gives as Dom in that moment is brilliant. Like, actually, like, genuinely incredible acting. And I'm not used to that from the Egg in a Vest, if I'm being honest with you. It's really, really good. It's like a really great moment. But yeah, so I don't know if you agree with that or not, but I do think they hurt that moment by having the scene where he tells Mia. I don't think they need that scene. They can have the scene of him getting to Mia and saying, look, whatever Dom's into, he's in trouble. We need to find him. Give me his number. You know. But they didn't need to actually give it away because it hurts the moment that follows. But that's just me.
Yeah, it hurts the moment with Dom. I do like the moment with Mia, though. And I think those two, you know, it focusing in on those two and their relationship is quite nice. But you know, we don't ever then explore Mia and how she feels about him. We just literally run off with him and Dom. So if the end is Dom and Brian, then you know, choose to make that moment the thing there. So yeah, I think I would agree with you in the end. But the end of this movie is a series of things you want to see explored more.
Yes.
You know, like, it's insane. Like, you want Mia and Brian to be explored more. You want Brian and the cops that he's just like let down to be explored more. You want, just all of it is like, come on now.
Yeah, my last note is, where is the rest of the movie?
Yeah. And I like the note. I like it ending on, you know, Dom riding off into the sunset. But we could maybe even like the sergeant guy getting out, the cars surrounding them, and the sergeant guy gets out, and he looks at Brian and he just shakes his head. Do you know what I mean? Like something like that. Yeah, because we don't even see. You know, the movie just ends on a shot of Brian, doesn't it? Do we literally see
it ends
Dom
on a
riding
shot.
off?
It ends on a shot of Brian with the police sirens rising, which I think is actually weirdly artistic and quite good. And I think like adding a shot of the police pulling up doesn't really do any more for it. I kind of think you either need to do it exactly there, so the final beat of the movie is Brian's choice, or the movie needs 10 more minutes. Right, you can't. I don't think there's a middle ground in this. I think you either need to give me several more minutes of consequences for all the things that have just happened, or you end it there and it's kind of a weird, artful, like fill in the gaps yourself thing, which, you know, again, might be accidental, but works quite well. The only thing I think does hurt the movie is the little mid-credits thing, which is just unnecessary. I don't know why we need to see Dom in Mexico. We've already seen him ride off. Is that just? I don't know. Why have we done that with his narration about living his life 1 quarter mile at a time? That's so unnecessary. And also, a lot of people won't see that.
I didn't see that.
Oh, right. Okay. Well, I'll very briefly describe it for you, Chris. It's just like Mexico 2 months later or whatever, and it's Dom's in a car driving it through Mexico, and he's giving a really generic speech about living his life 1 quarter of a mile at a time,
which he's already done in the film.
Right. So,
what did you think?
Yeah.
Forgetting how it gets muddled later, what did you think about like the backstory about, you know, his dad? And because again, Vin Diesel acting, I thought his performance, you know, when he's kind of going, I thought I heard screaming, turns out the screams were mine, or whatever it is. I thought it was quite effective. I thought it was all right.
Yeah, I mean, it's surprisingly well written, that scene, for these movies, because usually these movies have really good like sort of like writing when it comes to like big character shifts. Things like what we talked about earlier with the ending of the movie, but they're not very good at nuance or subtlety, so the dialogue is often bad, which is fine because it's kind of a schlocky franchise, so that's okay. They've always gotten away with having not great dialogue on that grounds. I think that's pretty well written as a scene goes.
Yeah, I do. I do, for sure.
And it's the same movie where someone says to a guy making out with a girl, take her upstairs, you've got to, what is it, strip the car before you can detail her or something like that? Like there's some bullshit.
Yeah.
So this is the same movie that gave us that corker of a line of dialogue. And yet here we have this quite eloquently written, like, and I don't mean eloquent, eloquent's the wrong word, this quite well-structured speech that it feels like it's Dom speaking, but it's weirdly poetic and it's structured in a way where the reveal is so perfectly placed. Like, turns out Dom is a storyteller, because Dom does this thing where he does like a little double bluff where he's like, the man was screaming. And then he explains that afterwards they said he died on impact, which means he couldn't have been screaming, so people say the screams are mine. The way he dovetails back to that, like it's a twist, I'm like, oh, I'm not Shyamalan over here. Not just telling his little story, built a little twist in. It's really well done and it's very effective, and it does a lot for their relationship because this scene immediately follows the scene where the police, starting to sense that Brian is wavering, say, hey, you know what he was in prison for, right? Like, he did hard time for nearly murdering a man, and they show him the pictures, and then we follow it up with that scene. Oh, come on. Yeah, very well done. It's good. It's very good. Do you have any thoughts on that scene particularly, or?
No, what I just said. I really liked Vin Diesel's acting in it. I thought it was like you say, a piece where we paused, a scene where we paused and had a real piece of nuance within there. It is funny watching it and going, this has all been made a lot more complicated by subsequent movies. But in this movie, it plays out really, really nicely. And I think, again, it's just an example of they do spend the time on Dom and Brian in this movie, and I think that's a good choice and an effective choice for the movie and where it goes. And also, it's a great way, because you could watch this movie and at first be like, is Dom meant to be the villain? Are we meant to like him? But we seeing his family values and that scene in particular, and I think Vin Diesel's performance in general being quite not overly villainous, because it's not overly anything particularly. I think, the fact that the movie, you could look at this movie on paper and just go, is Dom the villain? Am I meant to be pleased that Brian does it in the end? But you absolutely are. When Brian hands over because of scenes like that one, when Brian hands over those keys at the end, it's a moment of triumph. You're like, yeah. Go on. Be free, you thief.
Well, that's what's interesting about this movie, is like Dom, like, it's hard to get you on Dom's side because Dom is kind of a mysterious figure through a lot of this movie, which means we don't get as much character development from him as maybe we would like. Like, that scene is the biggest moment of character development he gets. We know he's fiercely loyal, but then at the same time, we have him like shitting on his own guys when they abandon him. So it's like, he's loyal, I guess, until you're not loyal, and then he's less loyal.
And also, the moment where you go, I don't know if they do enough to justify. They do enough in that scene to justify, look, he did beat the guy up, but here are the reasons. I don't think they do enough, even having watched this movie before. The moment you see them beginning the heist, and you have that moment of, oh no, they are the gang. they are doing this. They are robbing people. Letty's involved. Like, it does jar a bit. I don't know if they justify why they're a gang, why they're doing this.
Yeah, why they're committing crimes. Like, yes, agreed. Because he could probably get by just, with running his little garage. He might not have the fast cars for the street racing or whatever, but,
Dan, it's not about the mortgage. It's not about the shop. It's about that time where I'm racing that quarter of a mile. So he doesn't care. It's not about that. It's about that quarter of a mile, baby.
But that makes it all seem very shallow, because then essentially what this movie is telling us, and maybe I'm misrepresenting it here, and if I am, obviously, email in, comment in, whatever. But is the movie not then essentially saying Dom's selfish love of racing has led him to put his family in both legal and physical danger, because that's the real reason he's ripping off these trucks, is to support his racing habit financially?
I don't even know if it's to support his racing habit. I think you could with not much rewriting, you could do a version of this movie where actually it's about the thrill. He's chasing the adrenaline and the thrill of it, and that becomes a bit of a theme, later with
movies,
these movies.
For sure. Yeah, for sure.
And actually, you could do a world where that's why Brian's conflicted, because as much as he thought he wanted to be a cop, actually he's enjoying the thrill of it as well. And I think this movie could definitely push that theme more.
Wouldn't it have worked better if it had been that he was doing it for the money to support the whole gang, like his friends? Like Mia has that little... Is she running that restaurant? I don't really know what that is, where he was getting the tuna sandwich at the beginning of the movie. We never see anyone in it again, so I don't really... Is that a little restaurant attached to the garage? I don't really understand what
That's
that is.
how it seemed, yeah.
Yeah, very strange.
Weird.
Anyway, maybe he's doing it to support those guys financially, because otherwise they'd all be in a really rough place, money-wise. But then, because if you tell me that, then at least he's doing it for his family, for his found family, and that's all linked to the themes and stuff. But yeah, you're right. They never do that. Let's start breaking down some of the wider elements of this, because let's get more of an eagle eye view. You're our resident love story guy. You love a good love story. No one loves a love story more than Chris. There's a love story in this movie. How do you think it plays out? Where does this rank on the Chris-ometer of love stories?
Well,
6 Chris's out of 6?
There's two. There's 2, Dan. And if you were asking me about Mia and Brian, I'd have gone, it's better handled than Dom and Letty, at least.
Shit, yeah, I forgot about the other one. Yeah, go on. I was thinking of Brian and
literally,
Mia, but yeah, absolutely.
Dom literally says to her in the car, he's like, I love you. Yeah. Mia and Brian. Well, the trouble is, we never get the conclusion. We see 2 acts of a 3-act love story. We don't see what happens after. We don't see what happens after he's let her down and betrayed her. Mm-hmm. We don't. I think their chemistry's good. I think. I can't remember the name of the. Is it something Brewster playing Mia?
Oh,
no, it's not.
No, I had it up. Sorry, I literally went away from it. It is.
Yeah, I can get it up.
I think you're right. Jordan Brewster.
Yeah, Jordan Brewster.
Is Jordan Brewster related to Paget Brewster?
Well, because
they have a similar look to each other, don't they?
When I first said Brewster, I thought, oh no, I must have that wrong, because that's Paget Brewster,
Google has automatically finished my search. Jordan Brewster, and I put R, and it went related to Paget Brewster. Let's find out. Google must know. Does Google know?
So Paget Brewster, for those that don't know, was in Community. She was in
Friends.
She was in Friends. She played the woman that was dating Joey and then kissed Chandler, and then Chandler was in the box.
Oh my god, that 8th cousins.
8th cousins?
Which means they're basically not related, as far as I can tell.
Why has Paget Brewster not been in these movies? So Jordan Brewster, I think, does a lot of the legwork with the performance on that. Her kind of the scene where she's seemingly studying, I think, and then she realizes Brian's coming in, and she's like, "Oh shit!"
Sorry.
And she starts to change and stuff. I thought was very sweet and endearing.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Chris, but before we get too far away from it, I just want to note that where I got the information from in the end was a website called famouskin.com, where you can type in the names of 2 celebrities and it tells you how they're related.
Just see what happens if you type in our names.
I doubt it'll. I think it's for celebrities, but we'll do it.
Yeah, but will it say we've got no results for either of these 2 people? They're not celebrities. What will it say?
Did not match any documents.
Yeah, well, that's unfair. Okay, so do type in Chris Evans and Lee Evans. See what it says.
No, he's only related to someone called Scott Evans.
Yeah, there you go.
And they are siblings. Oh, well, yeah.
I'm sure they're more excited about it than you are.
It's a whole page for Chris Evans' genealogy. I can look up his entire family tree. Is this for real? Fuck me. All right. I don't know what this website is, but I'm getting away from it. It scares me.
Yeah, it's creepy.
Would you like to know who's related to Austin Butler, Chris?
No, not really, but go on. Let me know.
Zach Braff and Austin Butler are related. Let's find out how.
Oh, they do look a bit similar, don't they?
Oh, yeah, that's surprising because they're 11th cousins, according to this website.
You what, sorry?
They're 11th cousins.
That's crazy.
11th cousins. This is insane. And hilariously, do you want to know something funny? The most distant relative that links them is somebody called Love Brewster.
Wow, it's full circle. That is full circle enough for us to stop talking about this damn website.
Wow. Sorry, I've just gone down a hole. Carry on about the love story.
I think Jordan Brewster's doing a lot of the heavy lifting. Paul Walker's great. Don't get me wrong. He's but in terms of their chemistry, and I think because he has to be a bit cagier because obviously he's lying to himself and others. I think she naturally can carry that a bit more. But I think they got good chemistry. But again, it's 2 acts of a 3-act story, and we don't get the 3rd act, so I can't give the relationship 10 points. But again, if they're getting at least double Letty and Dom, who basically have no screen time together, and he seems to be a bit of a cock to her at certain points, and you're not even sure if they are together for some of it, and then at the end he's like, "I love you," and yeah, bizarre. What did you think?
Yeah, I'm struggling with it because I just think it's like, as you said, I think you really hit on the problem. Because I was like, it didn't really work for me, but I don't really know why. And then you hit on it, which was, it's 2 acts of a 3-act love story, and we don't get the 3rd act. We get up to the end of the 2nd act, the lowest point, where they've fallen out. Yeah. So, like, it's not worked out. One's mad at the other, but we never get the makeup because the movie, again, drops everything to focus on Dom and Brian, which is correct, but also maybe wrap up your other plots first before you do that, rather than, Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know. Maybe in a weird way they don't need the scene where Brian and Mia like fall out, because quite frankly, like, if they're not going to pay that off, it already hurts.
I think you'd want, but then we'd be sat here going, is she even going to find out? We want to see her reaction to that, etc.
I guess so.
I think you have to have that. What you mentioned earlier, the action. What are you thinking of the action, my friend?
Look, the heists are pretty good. The races are awful. The races devolve into who can push the NOS button hardest or the most times. And some of that CGI work on the NOS does not hold up. Right. So I made this note actually. Like, I think the idea of seeing the internals of the car firing up, like the camera going into the car, down through the engine, seeing certain like pistons firing and things whirring, that's all really cool as an idea. In 2001, the execution, wobbly. So, yeah. I also don't like the weird speed force they enter, like from The Flash, like when they hit the high speeds and they're just in a weird black void with colours flying by them. That doesn't look good either. Again, the idea is good. The premise that, like, they're the only people that matter to each other in that moment, that the rest of the world just washes away. They're focused on their racing and each other. And that, everyone who's seen Creed 3, there's a bit where in one of the fights, towards the end of the movie, the whole audience vanishes. Everything but the two, the referee vanishes. It's just the 2 guys in the ring in like a black void. It's a really effective moment. It's a really cool moment. And it works really well because it tells us something about how focused they are at that moment. I think you could argue that is the intent here. Again, if you're being generous and you're sort of going for it, I do think there's a possibility someone just went, I'd look really cool. And the problem is the effects don't So visually, the effects don't hold up, but I can't hold it too much to account for that because 2001, many effects don't hold up from that era, so I can't really give that a real kick in for it. I will say though that the actual context of the action in the races is bad. It is. I put my foot down faster than you, or I put my down harder than you, and now I'm going to push the NOS button as many times as I can. I push the NOS button, I'm winning. You push the NOS button, you're winning. I push the NOS button, I'm winning. You push the NOS button, you're winning.
Well, that's because, Dan, whoa. The movie makes it very clear it's about when you push that NOS button.
Yeah, the movie does say that, but it doesn't really change that that's what the races are.
No, but that's the tension, Dad.
When's
the right time to push it?
Well, I don't know, because I'm not. The movie never gives me context for when that is. So all I can do is see a guy pushing the NOS button and then getting a boost, and the other guy pushing the NOS button and getting a boost. I think, yeah, they're bad. The races are bad. They don't look particularly good anymore. There's no tension to them at all. That's why I think I love the third one, because the third one is when they finally get street racing right. There's actual tension to it. They're not just doing drag racing, so there's actual skill involved in like turning the car and like
drifting
and like actually getting it around these tight corners, positioning, all that stuff. Really important. So like the third movie is the reason I fell in love with this franchise, I think, in a lot of ways. But we're not there yet. So the racing is bad, action-wise. But there are two heists that we see in this movie, and then a car chase that's not a race, an action sequence where... Actually, the third race. Okay, the very, very final race, the one that has the train added for tension, is pretty good. I like that one. I
think that's... Like we talked about earlier, that's coming from the characters. Like, I think the reason that one is so effective is because of what it means to those characters at that point.
Right. That's probably true. But the action for the heists, pretty good. I liked it. The opening action sequence, that's pretty, like, not a lot really happens in it, but seeing the cars like go under the truck to create a tight line to go through that weird barrier, like the way that the guy leaps to the car to get into the sort of cockpit of the truck to take it over. It's pretty simple, but it's very effective. It's not got a lot of necessarily tension to it, but it doesn't outstay its welcome. It's quite short. It's visually interesting. It's pretty cool looking. Like it works. The big set piece from the end of the movie, the desert highway heist thing, is great. It's really good. When the guy gets his arm trapped and the insane truck driver who just seems to have permission to murder a dude is just like firing through the truck wall, like the truck door, like that's a great sequence. Yeah, I love all of that. I don't know I've talked a lot about action. How are you feeling about the action?
No, exactly the same. I think this CGI was a good idea, but it doesn't hold up, and I don't think really held up overly at the time either. I think it looked a bit silly at the time.
It's so hard to gauge that, isn't it? I can't, we've come across this problem before, haven't we, doing this? Where we're like, I don't know, for the time, maybe this was good. It's hard to tell now. I'd have to go back and watch. I'd have to go back and watch like all the movies that came out that year to get a real sense of what the landscape looked like, whether this was on the good or bad end of it. But yeah, you could be right. I'm not saying you're wrong. I just don't know.
No. Yeah, no, I see what you're saying. I think a lot of the races could do with cutting back to either the other drivers. Like there's in the first race scene, there's literally a driver there for comic relief, a driver there that's doing the big reactions when Brian passes, yelling out his girlfriend's name, which we'll loop back to. I think, in the action with Jesse and Tran, if we're cutting to other people watching it, kind of going, is he going to do it? Maybe he's going to do it. Oh, shit, no, he shouldn't be doing this. There's a lot of cutting between dudes sitting in cars. And I think some of the race scenes would maybe benefit from us cutting away to onlookers, to people in other cars. Because what they do in like later movies, I think, I couldn't name a particular movie, but my memory of like later race sequences is we see other cars crash. We see big explosions and stuff as other cars go off the track and all that sort of stuff.
I think Tokyo Drift. I'm not certain about that for sure, but I'm pretty sure that starts at Tokyo Drift. Because
and that's really
got
effective,
loads of shots of onlookers taking videos in Tokyo Drift, and the reason I remember this is because the phones are like 1,000 years old in that. They aged really badly because they're all using these weird old video phones, and then it turns out the movie is supposed to be set like 5 years after we thought, and that just really fucks with it. But we'll come back to that.
Stunning, so good.
Yeah.
And you have to. The thing is, the movies did that. You sort of have to judge the movie partly on that. Like, you have to at least have part of the discussion be how well does it make sense what they did after, even though it's not necessarily the movie or the creator's fault. I think it is funny. So I think maybe those race scenes could benefit from that. But like you, I think the heist scenes, especially the one at the end, is great. I think really, really effective. Let's talk. Speaking of the guy's girlfriend, because look, the female characters in this film
Yes.
are an issue. The movie does not do enough for its female characters at all. But I do have to say that, so basically there's a girl and one of the drivers, she does say to him, she puts his hand on her breast and she says, "This is yours regardless, but if you win, you also get her." And then at the end, he's like, "Hey, baby." And she's like, "Fuck off, you lost." And I'm like, whoa, now hold on. You did say that regardless, you were his, and you've changed your mind really quickly. So I can see why he's upset, is my point. But it is also an example of the appalling objectification of women in this movie. And to be honest with you, I think the lack of characters, the lack of all the women are in service to the men in this movie. That's actually, I think, a bigger issue for me than the objectification. Because actually, I think some of the objectification is worse later, where there's scenes designed to get Gal Gadot in a bikini. In this film, those women are wearing what potentially they would be wearing to street racing,
like it's warm day clothes. I mean, most of the street races take place at night, so it does seem a little like it might be chillier. But they're wearing like shorts and like t-shirts,
and there's
crop tops or whatever. It's not like what I think happens in the second movie, which is like purely just like women in their underwear, essentially, or what equates to that, like bikinis and stuff.
Lots of shots of it. There's not actually, other than kind of establishing shots of the street race, there's not too much of that. There's a scene where Vin Diesel grabs Michelle Rodriguez's rear end and stuff like that, but it's not.
Well, we need to talk about that, because that is a montage of a bunch of people getting arrested, cut to shots of Vin Diesel getting laid with music underneath. It's the fucking weirdest thing I've ever seen in my entire life, Chris. I've never been more confused at a scene's existence. I'm absolutely baffled and will never understand it. I don't even have a criticism of it. I just literally had my mouth agape. Like, they are literally right now, they're doing a musical montage, and the two things that are happening in this montage is a bunch of people are being arrested, and Vin Diesel is making out with Michelle Rodriguez, presumably leading to sex.
Yeah, that was my assumption.
Right. Why is that in that montage? Did Vin Diesel just say, "Look, I've got to look super cool in this, so I need to be like, I need to get with the hottest girls. I need to have the coolest car. I need to like." Is this more ego shit from him? I don't know. I don't know. Baffling. It's so wild. Like, from a movie making perspective, like there's no way anyone wrote that in a script, right? It just doesn't make sense.
I don't know.
Cut to Lottie and Lenny and Dom making out. He grabs her ass. Cut to SWAT teams bursting through the door. Cut back to what song is under it? I don't know. Something very 2000s.
But there's that brilliant bit at the intro. Speaking of music, actually, we're going to loop back to music. First of all, I take it you agree the way the female characters are written to just service the men in the story is a bit of an issue.
Yeah, it's a huge issue, massive issue. It's horrible. It's and I think what's worse about it is the movie tries to rectify it and gets it even worse. Like there's a scene when pointing it out is the worst thing the movie could do. And there's a scene where they've just had they've been to the world's most awkward barbecue, which I thought was funny, but you know, like the world's most awkward barbecue. And then it's all the boys are getting to watch a movie, and Mia's doing the dishes. And for a minute they try to use it as a way to show Brian as like being a little bit better than that, because he kind of comes in and helps her with the dishes. But then you go, actually, no, he's just looking to get in her pants. So he's not really doing this out of like. Like, he's not doing this for genuine, like, reasons of chivalry. This is just him trying to get some. And then the fucking other dude comes in and just does some casual misogyny. Just like, Brian, what are you doing the dishes for? What are you growing some boobs or something? Like, he's just like, he doesn't say that, but he's like, that's the implication of what he says. And then, like, Mia doesn't help either by, like, saying she doesn't date her husband's friends. But then she asks that asshole where he'd take her, and then she invites Brian to do that? As some sort of, like, you're a misogynist, so you won't ever get the girl. And it's just like, by the movie attempting to address it, it's just made it so much worse. So, yeah, not a fan. Not a fan.
Absolutely fair.
Yeah, I just think, like, yeah, the way they treat women in this movie and subsequent movies is poor. And it remains poor.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
for sure. The music. I loved the intro to the street racing scene, just cutting between various pieces of Naughty's music.
Yes.
Like, it like just randomly Roll In by Limp Bizkit appears and then disappears, and then it's another song, and then another song. I thought that was really amusing.
Yeah, I mean, the music in this movie is obnoxious. It is... Like, one of my notes is this movie is so 2001 it hurts, and I think that is mostly the music, right? Like, it's... But you know what? I watched it, Nadia was in the room. She wasn't really watching it as such. Like, she was kind of just, like, in and out. But, like, she was loving the soundtrack to this movie. Like, if she hasn't gone and, like, added the soundtrack to this movie to her Spotify playlist, like, this morning, I'd be surprised, because she was into the music more than she was into the movie, so I can't really criticize it.
Oh god! Well, being conscious that there's a section of Triv that might prolong this a little bit. You got any other we covered all the areas I wanted to talk about? I think you got any other?
I probably got a couple of little nitpicks and notes. First of all, if a restaurant exists built into his little mechanic business, is it that much of a problem to have a regular? Don't restaurants get regulars? Like, there are restaurants that like somebody might work near, so they go there quite a lot.
Yeah.
Why is it is it just because it's actually, hiding a criminal enterprise, that restaurant? It's like a front, so him being there every day makes them all nervous.
Also, I can't, looking at that restaurant, if you were to say to me, right, there's a restaurant attached to a mechanics, and I'd be like, okay. And you'd be like, and it seems to be run by the same people. Okay. And then you said, what is the food you would least like to eat from that restaurant? I'm immediately saying tuna.
Yep.
Like, that just, that can't be good, can it?
No, and I will say, though, the movie does kind of cover that, because everyone's, like, even more suspicious of Brian because he gets the tuna. Like, there's literally a scene where the other guy is like, no one likes the tuna.
Yeah, and she's like, the tuna's still bad, So, but why does he need to eat that? Does Brian just like tuna, whether it's bad or not?
Yeah, sure.
Is he worried that if he orders ham, they'll be like, pork? He's the police. Like, what?
Yeah,
what's happening here?
I'm on board. Yeah, agreed. I also wrote the note, blah 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 nos, something nos, blah 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 nos.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yep. I really loved that. It was so adorable, so cute. They all turned up to the street race in like a triangle formation. Good for them. They choreographed that. Like, took some lessons from maybe the Spice Girls or something about like a bit of showmanship. If we're going to show up in our multicolored cars like Power Rangers, let's do it in a triangle formation. Very good. I love the movie dating itself by accident. When it's when Vin Diesel says you can find anything on the web, anything about anybody, and I'm like, ooh, tell me more about this web of which you speak.
I wanted more detail about that. So did the FBI dock his records and put fake shit on the internet?
Well, so he has he has a different surname at the beginning of the movie. So his name is like Brian O'Connor, but he's like Brian Lewis Spence or something. I don't know. They've made up some nonsense name. So presumably that's a fake record, that name. Or a real guy.
He really did go... Or he did go to juvie. It's just the internet's also missing out the bit where he's now a policeman.
Well, if he did go to juvie and that's what they're looking up, that's weird because he's not using his real name at the beginning of the movie, so...
Yeah, fair.
Brian is the real part, but the surname is different, so I don't know.
Yeah.
Little nitpick, I'm not sure you can forensically analyse skid marks from cars, but one of the cops does literally say, the skid marks came back the same, clearly from a Honda Civic. Okay, if you say so.
Oh, I love these movies.
I know. I also love the way the cops talk in this movie in general, because it's almost like they did a very special class on speaking in cliches. It's just amazing. Yeah, the other gang buying Honda Civics, we've talked about this, but just what a weird coincidence. Also, why does the undercover police officer get to come on the raid of the other family? If he's would that blow his cover if anyone noticed him?
That was insane. That was insane to me. Like, okay, he's got his face kind of covered, but just made no sense. Madness.
Yeah. We talked about that. Dom loses his shit when he gets accused of narking because I guess the movie really wanted to make sure we'd know he wouldn't be happy about Brian being a cop, like we wouldn't already know that. We not talked about this yet when we talked about the action. Sorry, big point. Sound design in this movie is fucking dreadful. They lost their minds. Someone hit their head and went, let's make it really realistic. And they were like, what do you mean? He goes, well, you know how if you were in a car that had the roof off and you were like trying to jump from that car to the other, the wind would be rushing, the engine's going in the truck, and you'd be like, all you'd be hearing is, and you no one better talk to anyone. Yeah. Well, we'll do that. But don't the characters have several lines of dialogue on the script? Yeah. They'll just say that. Will the audience be able to hear them? Not really. Will you be reaching for the subtitles? Maybe. Yeah, maybe you will. But it'll be realistic. Thanks, movie. Thanks, movie that has no other element of realism in it. Fuck off. So bad. Sorry, it's just awful. It drove me insane. Like, just 20 minutes towards the end of the movie of just white noise, basically. Ugh.
Yeah.
Right.
No, it's bad.
We've covered that. I think we might be done. Wait. Oh, I just made a note. The bike chase. We don't really talk about the bike chase because we skipped kind of straight from the big set piece to the Brian and Dom race. But there's a little chase on the guys on the bikes that is the end of our villain. Pretty good.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. Yeah. I think the death felt quick, but yeah, I think it's fine.
Yeah. And I think we've covered that. Everything else in my notes we've covered. So if you want, Chris, we can move our way into trivia. Unless you've got any other overall points about the movie. We talked about everything. We covered the visuals. We covered the action. We covered the music.
Yeah, no, I think we have, and and apologies because I feel like we've got a bit excited and talked about the franchise as a whole and stuff. But
I think that's okay for the first one, right?
Yeah, I think it's okay for the first one. I think we'll probably do it for all of them because I think it's very clear just how much enjoyment this franchise gives Dan and I.
Yes.
So yeah, very, very happy. Apologies if that's.
And I think this one needs to be discussed in the context of the franchise it birthed, because quite frankly, like, this is not really what these movies become. Like, as we said earlier, the DNA is there, but they're very different once they get to sort of 3 and 4. So,
and that's one of the things that's most fun about watching this movie, watching it and going, how did it turn into one of the biggest franchises of all time?
So it's not a surprise that we've gone and talked about the franchise as a whole.
Yeah,
because
that's fair.
We kind of needed to, because the context of this movie is the weirdness no way anyone watching this movie thought it would be one of the most financially successful film franchises of all time when watching this first one. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
So,
Yeah.
with that in mind, just
in that
overall
case, Dan-
thoughts, is this still worth watching? Absolutely. Recommend. I don't think it's a masterpiece. I think there are some weird structural things and choices, screenwriting-wise. There's a lot of casual misogyny and a lot of toxic masculinity. But it is super fun as a turn your brain off popcorn movie. The movies that follow it end up being way better. But you've got to start somewhere, and this is a pretty solid start, and it does kind of have a good thrust to it, and all of the themes that become prominent in the subsequent movies are present here. It's not like it's a complete U-turn. It's a complete U-turn in terms of the sort of how grounded the movies are. These guys become superheroes at a certain point in the franchise and start saving the world multiple times. But in these early movies, they're just boosting DVDs and it's just crime drama, and it's a pretty good one in terms of, again, turn your brain off, sort of like just get sort of sucked into the madness. Definitely enjoyable. Yeah.
I think it's more like the later movies, especially as you were saying thematically, than people realise. I think it's got some fun action. I think there's even the stuff that hasn't aged well, like the NOS graphics in the DVD stuff. That's not frustrating. It doesn't dampen it. It just adds to the sort of the ride and the amusement of the movie. And more than that, I think the story of Dom and Brian and the complexities of that and the conflictions in Brian is handled well, and I think is a very effective part of this movie, and sets them on the road for what follows. So I think it's well worth revisiting. I definitely recommend it, and I'm looking forward to triving it up. Let's triv it up.
Indeed, I'm gonna give you some trivia. So let's blast through this trivia. There's not as much trivia as I thought on this movie. There's a reasonable amount for Cars Exist, but not a crazy amount. Like a good, like the amount you'd hope for without it being like too much. Otherwise I'd be just listing cars. I'm not going to list all the cars that appear in the movie or anything like that. And we'll go through the triv that's actually triv related to cars. Anyway, working titles for this movie included Racer X, Redline, and Race Wars. I think it works like a funny joke in the movie that it's called Race Wars. I don't think you could have called the movie that without context. I think that would have been a problem. So they eventually landed on the title The Fast and the Furious, but the problem was there's a 1954 film with that same title. They ended up having to buy the rights to that title, but not the story of the film, in order to use it.
Oh, wow.
So the two movies are not in any way related. This is not a remake of the 1950s movie. I think that's pretty clear watching it, but sure. Now, Chris, we've done, 60 of these now, 70 of these, wherever we're up to, right? We've done a lot of these Rewind reviews. I'm about to describe to you the most insane alternate world casting we've ever talked about.
Can't wait.
I have never wanted a portal gun, a Rick and Morty portal gun, to go into a universe where something different happened more in my entire life.
Right.
Are you ready for this? Director Rob Cohen originally wanted Mario Lopez to play Dom, Mark Paul Gosselaar as Brian, and Dustin Diamond as Jesse. Now, for those of you wondering why those names are familiar, or if you're just not familiar with it at all, those are the three actors that were the leads, the male leads of the 90s sitcom Saved by the Bell. Actually, that's in 1990s. Didn't it start in 1989? The 1980s sitcom Saved by the Bell.
Oh, God.
He wanted an
Why?
alternate. I don't know, Chris.
What was he thinking?
No. You're asking the wrong guy.
How phenomenally distracting would that have been?
Well, Chris, funnily enough, the studio agreed with you. It was actually studio execs that feared that the reteaming of the Saved by the Bell co-stars would confuse audiences and vetoed the choice.
I mean, that makes no... What? Oh, my God.
Now, Now, let me ask you, Chris. Rick and Morty Portal Gun, first universe you're going to. It's this one, right?
Oh, yeah. and I'm just Well, specifically this one, in a world where the other movies then also got made. Like, is The Rock played by Tiffany Amber Fessing? Like, obviously, nobody would want a world where the tragedy that so tragically ensued here took place. But if we're able to take all that kind of horribleness out, the notion of watching this series with those three as leads is insane. That's one of the bizarrest. Like, I'm literally now like, right, what are this director's other films so I can see what other fucking madness Rob Cohen is.
Rob Cohen also directed, I've got them here, where with me, the Alex Cross movie, a bunch of the Mummy movies. The Mummy sequels. The Return of the Tomb of the Dragon Emperor. He did the movie Stealth, which is a movie about a plane that's got AI in it that goes insane. They have to fight a AI plane. He directed Triple X, which is a great movie. Man, Triple X 3 is insane as well. At some point we'll do the Triple X movies, I think, because they're quite fun too. You want to talk about an ego project? He also directed Dragonheart, and now this one I love, Daylight. That's a great movie. We'll come back to Daylight, I'm sure. I love Daylight.
Unfortunately, there's some horrible allegations against him, which obviously we didn't know until this moment.
Really?
But yeah, some really horrible shit according to Wikipedia.
God. All right.
That is one of the bizarrest decisions. That's insane. That would have been madness. And Jesus.
Yeah, but put him in a bin. I've just seen. Ugh, gross.
Okay. Yeah, exactly.
Bad dude.
He should not be. We are not celebrating him. That decision. Jesus Christ, I would love to see that movie though.
Yeah, Mario Lopez, Mark Paul Gosselaar, and Dustin Diamond as the characters. Yeah, that would have been great. Anyway, other alternate castings, less exciting, but Mark Wahlberg and Christian Bale were also considered for the role of Brian. Weirdly, also considered was Eminem. I don't know if this is pre or post 8 Mile. Probably pre, right? When was 8 Mile?
Yeah, that sounds pre. You know what? I think Eminem would have done a good job. I think with anything like this though, you kind of
8 Mile was the very next year. So
okay, any alternative castings with stuff like this though, when something went on to become a franchise, you just kind of go, but they probably wouldn't have stuck around for 10 movies. So
we'll have to cover 8 Mile on here at some point. That's had a great cast in it. Anthony Mackie's in that movie. Brittany Murphy. I think Kim Basinger.
I have a lot of happy memories of that movie. Not a lot of happy memories, sorry, but I remember it being a good movie. I remember really enjoying it.
I do too. Anyway, so they were all considered for Brian. Timothy Olyphant was apparently offered and turned down the role of Dom Toretto, thinking it would be too similar to another correlated film he'd just been in, which I think I looked this up. It was Gone in 60 Seconds he'd just done, which was in the year 2000. At one point, studio execs were hoping to get Colin Farrell in to play Dom. I'm glad that didn't happen. I think that's wrong. I love Colin Farrell, but that's wrong casting. That doesn't work.
Yeah.
Paul Walker was then the first one to sort of sign on when they finally settled on actors. Vin Diesel apparently took a bit more persuading and ended up having several script changes made for him. With that in mind... Is that where the scene with Letty comes in that we were talking about earlier?
We don't know.
Anyway, because that is such a weird choice. Anyway, Paul Walker has stated that the reason he chose to do this movie is because of a movie called Donnie Brasco, 1997. He thought the role of an undercover cop would be a cool idea, and he thought he'd like to portray that kind of character. I'm not sure I've ever seen Donnie Brasco. Maybe we'll have to add that to here at some point, because I think that's like a famously good movie, is it not?
Yeah, I don't know. I've never seen it, but yeah.
The role of Mia Toretto was actually written for Eliza Dushku, who I think would have been a wonderful choice for that role. I love the performance we got, but Eliza Dushku is a great actress. She actually turned it down in the end. In addition to Dushku, Natalie Portman, Sarah Michelle Gellar, Kirsten Dunst, and Jessica Biel also auditioned for the role of Mia before Jordan Brewster was cast. I don't think any of those are right for the role, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
I think some of them could have done it okay. Like, Natalie Portman would have been... She's a good actress. Like, she would have probably given it a good old go. But I just think they all... With the exception of Elijah Dushku, I think all those are pretty much poorly cast. I don't think any of them really fit the role. Neither Michelle Rodriguez nor Jordan Brewster had driver's licenses or even learner's permits before production of this movie.
Fair play. So presumably they had to learn for this then.
Yeah, looks that way. Yeah, it doesn't specify that, but I'm going to assume that's that was what caused them to eventually do that. But it's not as surprising as people think. I mean, LA, a lot of people, like, especially if you're in like movies and stuff, you probably get driven around a lot, so you probably don't need a license if you don't have one. And also, they were pretty young, so yeah. Paul Walker and Matt Schultz, who played Vince. They actually choreographed a really like specific fight for their sort of scuffle outside the grocery store. But when it came to the shoot, they didn't. They did it once. It didn't feel right. It felt too like specific. Didn't feel like sort of scrappy enough for what they wanted. So they just went and improvised one. And I think they were right. It's better.
Yeah, for sure.
Vin Diesel's character is supposed to be 24.
Oh god.
I mean, I have nothing to say to that other than Vin Diesel was 34 when he made the movie. Vin Diesel and Michelle Rodriguez were dating during filming on this film. Oh, sorry. This is a section of trivia I'm just going to call "Did Vin Diesel write these?" So Vin Diesel and Michelle Rodriguez were dating during filming, and Vin Diesel accidentally broke a stuntman's nose during the making of this movie because he's such a tough guy.
Because he's the boss.
Oh man. During the race wars, real life drivers brought their cars to participate in the huge scene. Yeah, that makes sense. Over 1,500 cars were at the race war sequence, and over 15,000 individual sound effects were used throughout the street races. During this movie, Vin Diesel went through 160 Coronas. Wait, no, sorry. Let me just reread that. Sorry. During the Harry Potter movies, Daniel Radcliffe went through 160 pair of glasses.
Nice. Good take on it.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. We've covered that one. Filmmakers asked owners. Oh, this is a great. This is a surprising level of attention to detail. I was just like, really? Okay. Filmmakers asked the owners of houses that happened to be in the backgrounds of the scenes to repaint their houses with more muted colours so the colourful cars would pop more.
Jeez. They must have paid them, surely, to do that.
Or done it for them, maybe. Like, we'll repaint your house for you if you let us choose the colour. Maybe. Yeah. Anyway, yeah. I that's pretty good attention to detail. Like the desire to do that. I think that just definitely shows like this. They were putting a lot of thought into some of this stuff. First street race scene.
Yeah, and I think you could only ask, can't you? I think people can. If people are like, oh, that seems a bit unreasonable, well, people can turn it down. That's not a problem. Like,
yes. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, the first street race is supposedly a quarter-mile race, approximately taking 10 seconds. However, the race takes up 2 minutes of screen time, there you go, and shows the vehicles driving in excess of 150 miles per hour, faster than even a 1,200 horsepower Bugatti Veyron could accomplish at a quarter mile.
Wow.
Uh-huh. Anyway, the movie playing on the television in Dom's house during the movie night is Dragon, the Bruce Lee story, a movie from 1993, which was also directed by name redacted. So there you go.
Yeah. There you go.
If you pay attention from the point of the... this is pretty... I like this. If you pay attention from the point of view that you get from the train as Brian and Dom crosses the tracks at the end of the movie, Brian is ahead by a couple of inches. Earlier in the movie, Dom tells Brian it doesn't matter if you win by an inch or a mile, winning's winning. So there you go.
Yeah.
You know that one?
Well, I just think, he also won when Dom took his eye off the road and got taken out by a random truck.
Oh no, I think that's after the race. The race stops at the lights, right?
Yeah, I suppose, yeah.
So I think, but as they cross the line, quote unquote, Brian is ahead, according to this trivia. I didn't pause it myself. Yeah. So, okay. At the house party, Dom says to Brian, "You can have a beer you can have any beer you want as long as it's a Corona." Now, first of all, this starts the long trend of these movies using Corona quite heavily as a drink.
Another element that's here, like Coronas and barbecues are already here and in this movie, and I don't know if I would have remembered that. Yeah.
But it's supposed to be a reference to automobile innovator Henry Ford, who is quoted as once saying, "You can have any colour you want as long as it's black," when referring to his Model T car back in the day.
Right.
Except he probably didn't say that. That quote is often attributed to him, but basically the car he was referencing, the Model T, came in a bunch of colours, including green, red, and grey and blue, and several others. And actually, the Model T wasn't even available in black at all during its first couple of years of production. So he probably never said that sentence. So they're referencing a thing that never happened. Cool. When at the party after the first race, the song Area Codes by Ludacris could be clearly heard. Ludacris, of course, would go on to play Tej in numerous sequels in the series. I didn't notice that, but that's fun.
He's one of my favourite bits of the sequels, Ludacris.
Yeah, he's great. Name redacted, the film's director, cameos in the movie. He's the pizza man who's blocked by the first race. So there you go.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. When first submitted to the MPAA, the film received an R rating. Some shots from the final robbery were showing Vince's mutilated arm were cited as the reason. So they cut most of the gore to get the rating dropped. Makes sense.
Yeah, I think that was a smart business decision.
Sure. So it is time, Chris. We're here.
Here we go.
It's Cars Exist. Very good. I think since you've gotten into Formula
One, that was me pressing the NOS and then that was me pressing the NOS and then going faster.
I was going to say, I think since you got into Formula One, your car noises have gotten better.
Oh, thank you.
No, I think you've sort of. I think you've got a better sense of what a car sounds like when it passes a source of sound and then goes the other way. So it's that like, you know, that sort of like where it gets louder and then goes because of the speed. Anyway, look, just take the compliment. It's a weird compliment, but it's a compliment nonetheless.
No, I like that. No. I'm oddly touched by the compliment. I'm very pleased with the compliment.
Yeah. Now there's obviously quite a bit, but it's not as much as I thought it might be when we're doing Cars Exist. So I'm not going to list all the cars that are in the movie. Just find a website for that. The Internet Movie Car Database exists. Go have a look on there, and there's tons of exact models and stuff. And normally we do that as a joke on here because when we first started this podcast, weirdly, loads of movies just had a piece of trivia in the IMDb trivia. It was like, the car this person drives is and then they give the really specific model number and type and what modifications and stuff. And we found that quite funny, which is why we started doing Cars Exist. Sorry, let me rephrase that. I don't want to throw Chris in with this nonsense. I found that really funny and forced this upon everyone else. But so with this one, we're not going to do that because there's a bajillion cars in the movie. And if we just list every kind, it's going to take forever. But some of these have specific either details about them or things that are related. So that's the kind of trivia we're doing for this today. So only two domestic cars, as in US cars, are ever driven by the principal cast in this movie. Dom has the 70s Charger, and Brian has the Racer's Edge 4 Ford Lightning Parts truck. Those are the only two cars made in America that are driven. Well, unless you count the post-credit scene, the car that Dom is driving is a 70 Chevrolet SS. So it's very interesting that a lot of the cars in this movie are actually sort of imported cars. But that kind of makes sense with the street racing scene that they'd import cars and stuff. So the car that Dominic drives throughout most of the movie is the RX-7. That car actually originally has a roll cage, but it was removed. Oh, here's another section of trivia that I think Vin Diesel himself added to the IMDb. Dominic's RX-7 originally had a roll cage. It was removed to accommodate Vin Diesel's physique.
Wow, he definitely added that, I think.
It feels that way. The Volkswagen Jetta that Jesse drives in the movie was later purchased by Frankie Muniz.
Of Malcolm in the Middle fame?
Yeah. Now, recently, he's actually entered NASCAR. He is a big, big petrol head, loves cars, loves racing, and is currently spending his time getting into NASCAR. Like, as a driver.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah. I like Frankie Muniz. Oh, he just kind of does. He just kind of follows his bliss. He just kind of like, I want to do that. And he just does it because he's got Malcolm in the Middle money, so he can.
Fair play.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, fair play to him.
The car Leon drives is a Nissan Skyline R33, which was not available in the United States at the time and must have been imported from Japan. Well, there you go. The Honda S2000s, driven by Johnny Tran and Suki in the Fast and the Furious movie and in the sequels, are literally the same car. So I see. So Johnny Tran in this movie and Suki in the sequel, Too Fast, Too Furious, they're literally the same car. The S2000 was just rented from a real-life owner who then also has a cameo in the first movie driving a Honda Civic. So yeah, they've given two villains. Actually, is Suki a villain? I don't know. I'm not sure which character Suki is from the second one. But basically, they're driving literally the same car, not just the same model. But obviously, it's not supposed to be the same car. So, yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah. The green 1999 Mitsubishi Eclipse GST that Paul Walker is driving at the start is the same one used in a movie called Sex Drive. I've never seen the movie Sex Drive, but sure.
Apparently, we know what Dan's picking next.
What was that saying?
I said, I think we know what Dan's picking next.
You do now. Let me look this movie up. I actually don't know what this movie is. Let me find out what this movie is. This is my own curiosity. 2008 movie, an American road comedy film about a graduate who goes on a road trip to have sex with a girl he met online. Sure.
That sounds bad.
It does sound bad. I'm definitely picking it. Seth Green is in the movie. James Marsden is in the movie. I recognise some of these names. Katrina Bowden's in the movie. She was in Tucker and Dale versus Evil.
Oh, yeah.
And 30 Rock. She's okay. No. This doesn't look good. Fall Out Boy appear in the movie as themselves. Anyway.
I'm in. Let's watch it.
Let me go back to my notes because I got away from them to do that. Apparently, there are a few differences between the car in its two appearances. Obviously, this movie was 2001. It then reappears in a movie from 2008. Between the two times, it was changed, such as the roof scoop. I don't know what a roof scoop is, but apparently it's not there anymore in the 2008 movie. Dominic Toretto's black muscle car, the 1970 Dodge Charger, has a 528 CI supercharged Hemi and a 727 automatic transmission. Very exciting.
There you go.
The Charger has the same body style, although 1 year newer, as the famous 1969 Dodge Charger, the General Lee that was used in the Dukes of Hazzard series so famously in 79. After the filming of the crash at the end of the movie, that same 1970 Dodge Charger wound up in the opening scenes of a movie called Herbie Fully Loaded. Ever heard of it, Chris?
I have indeed. I've never seen it, but I don't think I've seen any of the Herbie movies, but I have heard of it.
Yeah, so after they filmed the crash, the car was obviously in intentionally bad shape, and it ends up in the Herbie Fully Loaded as a car in the background in the junkyard scene. So there you go.
There we go.
So that's Cars Exist, everyone. Chris hit the NOS button again.
Well, first of all, Dan, let's do where we're going next before where the peeps can find us. Where we going next, Daniel?
So, Chris and I talked last year about we've never done a movie that neither of us have seen on Rewind Reviews, because usually one of us is choosing a movie from our past, and then the other one is either being introduced to it or also is familiar with it. And we just review it, and it's that's the premise of this podcast. But we thought it'd be fun every now and then, to start doing movies that neither of us have seen, just to see if this movie that's famous that for whatever reason we've missed is popular. And we were thinking about this, and at the exact sort of time we mentioned this during the last season of Rewind Reviews, I think we talked about it on one of the episodes. I can't remember which one. I was then just looking through Reddit, just doing my usual doom scrolling, and there was a post about underappreciated movies, and I was just flicking through it. There's a bunch of movies that I've already seen, and I'm just like, yeah, these are underappreciated movies. These are good movies. And there was just this post that was fairly high up and quite highly voted, saying "Drop Dead Gorgeous" from 1999, and I'd never heard of this movie, Chris. So I look it up, and it seems to be a sort of mockumentary. About maybe about pageants. I'm not sure. I had a glance at the trailer. I tried not to watch too much of it, I think I turned it off before the trailer even got really going, because I was just like trying to figure out if this is something I thought might be worth giving a go. And yeah, it's a comedy from 1999. It has Kirstie Alley in it, who actually I think sadly passed away recently. Bit of a coincidence, actually. When did she? Yeah, December, just gone. So that's unfortunate now, but I hadn't thought of that when I was doing it. But Kirstie Alley, Kirsten Dunst. Who else is in this movie? 1 second. I had it up and I closed it because I'm an idiot. Here we go. 1999's Drop Dead Gorgeous. It has a good cast though. I think Alison Janney is in it from The West Wing. Oh, Denise Richards. Oh, we've just seen actually in Starship Troopers. Oh, I didn't think about that, but there you go. Brittany Murphy has a small part in the movie. Amy Adams apparently has a small part in this movie. I don't know. I was looking at this cast and I kind of thought everyone's telling me this movie is like, an underrated classic. Well, not everyone, but the people on that particular thread on Reddit were. And it's a movie I knew was very unlikely to have been seen by both of us, Chris. So I am selecting Drop Dead Gorgeous as a also mockumentary in 1999.
Yeah, no, that's probably the mockumentary element is the most intriguing element to me, I must say.
Yeah, fascinated by that. So here we are. I'm kind of curious. I like the sound of it. So yeah, it's small town beauty pageant. Blah blah blah. People go to any lengths to win. I don't know. It sounds like it could be kind of fun.
I'm excited.
And Chris, joy of joys. It's only about an hour and 30 minutes long. Probably given that there's no history as well, the podcast itself might be shorter too. What? But yeah,
where can the people find us, Dan?
Well, I wanted to know if you were excited about that choice first, Chris.
No, I am. Like I said, the mockumentary bit of it is the most exciting part for me. But it's a really good cast. I think if the Reddit thread liked it, then there's merit. I think it fits the brief of a film we've not seen before. Well,
yeah, I agree because it's from that era too, like late 90s. Feels like a movie we could have watched and done. So it doesn't feel like it'll be too far from like something we could have suggested if one of us had stumbled across it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that feels the way to do it. Do a movie we could have seen and could be doing on here for that reason.
Yeah.
Yeah. And for the second time, you'll be going in very blind, although seemingly not as blind as Rent-A-Kid.
No, not as blind as Rent-A-Kid, because with this I had to do a little bit of just like, will this fit the podcast? Because I trusted with Rent-A-Kid, you'd sort of, knew what you were selecting and why. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, that it would fit what we do on this podcast. And, like, because there are movies we'll probably never get to on this podcast. Not because they're not worth discussing, but just the tone of this podcast is very specific, I think. There are certain movies I just don't think we'll ever really cover. But
I don't know. We've got genre-wise, we've gone pretty, in tone-wise, in terms of movies, we've gone pretty all over the place.
Yeah, we have though. There's a big shift in tone, but I think in terms of like era, like I don't know. There's certain kinds of movies that we genre-wise we jump around, but I still feel like if we do like an artsy film, we always do like a classic. We never watch like a bad, like Oscar bait movie.
Yeah.
When we've done those kind of movies, those kind of like classy dramas, it's been because they're classics.
Yeah.
So there is a certain, when we watch a movie that's a bit more potentially like it could be really bad, we tend to end up going like 90s, 80s, and we tend to lean comedy. So I just think there are certain unspoken rules about selecting a film for Rewind Reviews that we've accidentally kept to by not really verbalizing. But yeah, so I had to do a little bit of googling this one just to sort of check what I was getting into, and like I said, I watched like I think a half a trailer and was like, yeah, this seems fun. So yeah, we're gonna do that. We're actually recording that one in a couple of days, so I'm excited.
Nice.
Yeah.
Where can the peeps find us, Dan?
For the third time, I'm actually going to answer that question, Chris. They can find us in all sorts of places. Patreon.com/nothingbutstatic if they want to support us financially. If they'd like to give us a little bit of money, you also get the bonus of getting access to the Discord, where where everyone's gathered and we chat about things on there. Usually like TV and movies and stuff. This week there was some chatter about the Oscars, which happened, and blah blah blah. That's the jazz. And then you get episodes of this a week early and our other podcast analyzing Avatar. So if you want to hear us discuss Drop Dead Gorgeous right now and you're listening to this on like Spotify or iTunes like some sort of chump, you got to head over to the to the Patreon for as little as $1 a month upwards. You can get access to the episodes early and a special RSS feed that allows you to just add it to your normal podcast app. Rather than having to like download the file from our Patreon, and because some people have said in the past that like it just seems inconvenient to have to download the file and it's not in like a feed, but we do have a special RSS feed for our patrons that you can pump into your normal podcast app, and then it just gets the episodes when we put them up on Patreon as audio files. Just it seems to work pretty well. A few people have reported back that using it is quite convenient. So setting it up is slightly an extra step. You've got to get the link, put it in, and then enter your password and username for Patreon, I think, when you put it into your podcast. Once you've done that once, it's just there. So I've not actually tested this theory myself because I am not one of my own patrons. Chris, you could, though. Are you still one of our patrons? Yeah. Are you still spending $1 a month on our...
I believe so, yeah.
It's a just running joke that when we first set it up to sort of test how it worked, Chris signed up with the intention of immediately cancelling it and just having that one. And he's just left it in place, so I just get £1 a month off Chris. It's great.
Although I never get email notifications about our Patreon, and I do another thing that I'm a patron too, so maybe I will double check that.
I bet you cancelled that a long time back.
I don't know.
I could check. Should we check right now while we're on the podcast? Do you want to tell people about the YouTube channel? I'm going to look up if you're a patron or not.
Yeah, because this is the problem. This is the reason if I am still doing it, this is the reason. I go to Patreon, it goes sign in, and I'm like, I've got no fucking idea what my sign in is. Never mind.
All right, let me look. I've got our current patrons listed here. Let's have a look. I've got the full list. Are you in here, Chris? Oh, there's multiple pages of patrons now. This is crazy. Thank you, by the way, for everyone who does this. You're all heroes.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember not. So, hold on. Let me search. What?
Chris, you are still signed up.
Am.
You are still signed up for $2 a month, and you've been doing it for so long. Would you like to hear how many dollars over the years you've donated to me?
Yeah, go on.
It's 120. Okay, no. Oh God! Thanks for the money, Chris.
No worries, mate.
To be fair, it's mostly just been going back into the. It's just been going back into the. You're just helping pay for the servers, but you've been a patron for 60 months at $2.
Oh dear. Oh well.
So good. That's so good. Oh, that's my favorite thing.
Oh well.
You should cancel that immediately. But anyway, it's on you, buddy. That's your fault. You knew that.
Oh yeah.
We've been reminded multiple times. You done nothing.
I'm not denying that. I'm not mad.
You shouldn't be. It's your own fault. It's great though. All right, so yeah, you can get us on a few other places. YouTube.com/NothingButStaticUK will allow you to see the video versions of these. And I should clarify, the video versions is just literally like some relevant visuals to this exact podcast. Mostly the reason we put them on YouTube is because it gives people two options. One, it helps with findability, because I find discovering a new podcast on iTunes and Spotify and all those places is actually not likely to happen. So YouTube's great because it gives us people, stumble across us, because YouTube actually has a pretty good recommendation algorithm. So we seem to get new listeners there, and then they stop listening to us on YouTube and move over, to the other platforms. So you can get us there, though, and the other benefit is that, of course, it's got a comment section. So if you want to have comments specifically on this episode, the Fast and the Furious one, and you want to send us some feedback, you can go to youtube.com/NothingButStatic, find this video, like it and subscribe it, because that helps. Like it and subscribe to our channel, because that helps. But also, then you can put a comment on the specific Fast and the Furious episode if you have anything to say about how insane it is that Chris has just given me $120 across 60 months, like a lunatic, just drip feeding me money.
Yep, it's a fair point.
So yeah, you can put the comments there. Obviously, there's many ways you can support us other than that, or just including keep you listening, telling a friend, all that jazz. And if you're not enjoying this, of course, just stop. No problem. Thanks for giving us a go. We appreciate your time.
Yeah, man. Absolutely.
We totally respect the choice to think this is just drivel, because it is. Except if you're one of our regular listeners, I don't really think that. You're making wise choices, I promise. Anyway, that's I think everything.
I'm not making a wise choice, Dan. I've paid 100 whatever it was dollars for my own content
that you definitely aren't listening to. It's my favorite thing. So yeah, I think that's everything. So thank everyone. Oh, we're no longer on Twitter, so you can get to us on those, and there's a chance I'll log in and see it, but like it seems unlikely. Yeah. So yeah, thanks everyone for listening. I'm trying to think. I'm sure I've missed something, but I can't think of it. Oh, mail at nothingbutstatic.co.uk. There it is. It's the email address I'd forgotten. Yeah, you can also send us feedback through that. So if you've got any thoughts and you don't want to go to YouTube, no problem. Also, feel free to leave us a review on your podcast platform of choice. That also helps. And we used to say this a lot, but we don't say it so much anymore. But yeah, rather than on the review telling us why this podcast is good, tell us about your rewind reviews. Like, what movie from your childhood have you come back to recently and not cared for or liked a lot or holds up? You know, tell us the movies that were important to you when you were growing up and whether they've held up for you or not. That's more interesting than reading a review of this podcast, if I'm being completely honest. Not that anyone who's done the reviews I'm not happy about. Like, obviously, we appreciate anyone taking the time to do it. But, you know, for yourselves, just do something a bit more interesting. You still helping us out, and then I can read about your stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so that's everything for this week. Thank you very much for listening, everyone. I'm going to hand over to Chris because he ends these, and I almost always forget that.
Yeah. I've been Chris Billingham.
I've been Dan Doolan.
And this review has been rewound.